Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. So tell a tater tot story.
Yeah, okay. So like I said, not related to today's topic anymore. However, 2 of my kids have been catering, and like Delia's off at college, but Sadie is still catering. And so she sort of went and catered her first solo wedding, like without her big sister there, right?
Wow.
She comes back and she's telling us all about it. She's catered this wedding and she's telling us, they usually give us a rundown afterwards of their job. And she tells us, we always ask about the food. And she said there was a tater tot bar. And I was like, what the hell is a tater tot bar? Right? Like I find out now from Delia, like they have like tater tot bars at college or something. I don't know. So anyway, I'd never heard of this. I was like, what the hell's a tater tot bar? Why would you have that at your wedding? And so it's like, you got tater tots and all these different toppings. I don't know what kind of toppings people put on tater tots because I'm not like a tater tot connoisseur.
Well, it's like potatoes. It's French fries. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, they're tater tots.
I don't know,
little...
maybe like cheese or bacon
exactly.
or
gravy.
Yeah. So then she keeps talking and she says there was a whiskey and weed bar also.
Whiskey and weed.
Whiskey and weed. And I was like, oh, now the tater tot bar makes sense.
Whiskey and weed and tater tots.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was what was served at this wedding.
I'm assuming that it's because the weed and you want a snack. Is that where you're going with
they got
tater
the
tots?
munchies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we were all worried about it because here's like Sadie, the first time she's driving home by herself, right? She's like just barely got her license. We're like, oh my God, did you get like a contact high? Do you need us to come pick you up? Wow. Who was the wedding? Was it, these were friends of hers? Or was it this like, no,
is it contracted?
She works for this catering company and they got this job. And like a lot of times, I guess, they've had a couple weddings that they've done where it's been like on a person's property, like if they have property on the bay or whatever. But a lot of times they're like at the Maritime Museum or some place like that down in Annapolis.
Got it.
This was at someone's house. They were catering from their large garage, and they had a whiskey and weed bar.
And tater tots.
And the tater tot bar.
I'm all for the tater tots and the whiskey. I'll pass on the weed, but I'll take the tater tots and the whiskey. I love a good tater tot.
Well, I mean, like I've heard of a bourbon bar or whatever, but it was like they had the different alliteration, the whiskey and weed. I just like, it blew me away. I thought that was so crazy.
That's, I'd like to have been there. I'd like to have been there and seen the tater tot bar. And see what the toppings they had serving. I tell you, with sticky rice, no longer the restaurant down in Fells Point. It was a sushi restaurant. They had good sweet potato tater tots.
Oh,
at a sushi restaurant.
Yeah, that's strange.
It was like a hipster restaurant, But they had you could do a bucket of tots, and that was good. And they had like this vegan sauce that you would get. You dip the tater tots in that vegan sauce. Oh, it was so good. And then they closed, and now it's some kind of vegan breakfast restaurant. I haven't tried it out, but I could eat some tater tots.
Yeah, I'm not that into tater.
I'll eat those before French fries. For sure.
Yeah. No.
You can pop them in your mouth. They're nice and crispy. Okay, so there was Rebecca's tater tot story. She's been wanting to tell that story for a while. So
I feel like it was really much funnier coming from a 16-year-old.
That's right. Yes. I think to hear her tell it would have been a lot more like, that's awesome, as opposed to,
because then we were asking her about, what, do you have any run-ins with the guests? She had some stories like that too, but whatever.
I'm sure. All right. So today's topic, we thought we'd do a nice quick one. Just something about calculating your weights for your sets and what to do between your warm-up sets, or I guess to do between your work sets. That's really, really what it is, because usually you shouldn't be doing too much between your warm-up sets. But what do you do between your work sets? I know what I do. Let's kind of hear about what Rebecca does. Maybe give you some ideas as to how to make your strength training sessions a little bit more interesting than just kind of sitting around looking at your phone, as I think most people do. But we thought we'd start maybe with calculating weights. You want to go with that?
With the warm-ups.
With that topic first, because that is really a hard thing for people to do. That's a tricky subject.
Well, I think we kind of covered it at one point before, but I think the place where this question comes up a lot for people is when they're sort of transitioning from like their beginning novice linear progression to the point where they're actually getting up to some heavy weights. Mm-hmm. I got my phone ringing in the background. Because like when I'm starting out with a person and they're lifting relatively light weights and they're learning the form, they're learning the movement pattern, I want them to get as much repetition and as much practice in during their training session as possible. Sure. So like we'll start out, and I mean, I guess typically you're going to start out with 2 sets of 5 with the empty bar for your squat, regardless of where you are in your training. That's usually advised to kind of get everything warmed up and lube the joints and whatever. Yep. Then when I'm starting with a person, I will continue to have them do sets of 5 as we sort of work up to whatever might be their top set. And I'll continue with sets of 5 all through their warm-ups for a number of weeks because they're still moving weights that are just really relatively light for them. And the important thing is for them to get as much practice as possible. It doesn't make sense in the beginning to be like, okay, this is your last warm-up set. Just do a single because it's not that heavy. And their goal at that point is more practice. Right. But eventually they get to a point where the weight is heavy enough on their work set that if they do a set of 5 on their last warm-up, that's going to be problematic. It's going to take something away from their first work set. So when people are making that transition on their own, I think is when this question comes up. Like they realize they're gassed before they start their first work set. And then they start, wondering, should I be doing something different? Right. So how do you have people do their warm up?
Well, I mean, I'm nodding my head in agreement. Nobody can see that, obviously, because this is a podcast.
It's an audio podcast.
But yes, in the beginning, absolutely. You want them to have as much practice as possible, especially people who may not move as well as others, right? I mean, there are plenty of lifters, and it differs. It's very individual. I'll have new lifters who pick up the movement pretty well. So I might have them doing sets of 5 for like the first week, maybe a week and a half, but then I'll start to definitely taper down the number of reps because they're jumping weights. They're jumping 10 pounds, let's say, at a time. And their weights are getting heavier, sooner than, I mean, they're still not heavy, but they're getting to a point where I don't want them to do 1,000 warm-ups before they get to their work set. But then I'll have people who may not even be starting with the bar just yet. So they're definitely going to be doing sets of 5. Let's say they're using just a dumbbell to do some goblet squats because they need to practice just how to squat, and handling the bar sends them into a tailspin because they're not used to that, weight on their back, even if it's light. They just don't have the form down as well as they should. I've got a number of people I've started with dumbbells with. And yes, I'm definitely going to have them do at least 5 repetitions every single warm-up set until they get to their work set. But after about 2 weeks, I want them to start to taper from sets of 5 to sets of 3 to 2. Some may have a single, somewhere typically with a upper body lift, not necessarily a lower body lift, but a press or a bench. The one thing I find that people have a hard time with is because we usually do 4 sessions with somebody when they're they're onboarding sessions. And during that time, I'm showing them how to write down their warm-ups, how to think about their jumps. And it is tricky in the beginning because the warm-up jumps are going to be so small, right? The person may only squat 65 pounds that day, if that, maybe not even, maybe just the empty bar. So the warm-up jumps are going to be really, really small. So they're going to be 5-10 pound jumps. What starts to happen when that happens is I have to be paid very close attention to when I let them go, kind of quote unquote, let them go after the 4 sessions. Now they're training in the group. I still will work through their warm-ups with them. Some people kind of they'll try it on their own, then they'll come to me and show me what they've written down, and then we'll make a few adjustments here and there. It takes about a month, I think, for people to really get a grasp of what's the actual pattern with my warm-up sets, right? And I try to talk about that during the time I'm with them, but there's so much information that I'm giving them. The last thing I want to do is bombard them with, okay, how, their numbers, how much they're going to warm up, what weight's going to be, how many reps they're going to do. Just keep doing sets of 5 for now. But as they get about a month into their training, that's when things start to get a little bit trickier, because now the weights are getting heavy, like you said. Now we have to make sure they're not doing 10 warm-ups before they get to their work set weight.
Well, yeah, because if you don't start to address it, that's what happens. They just start tacking on. They'll repeat exactly the warm-up that you gave them when they're only warming up to 65 pounds. So let's say, for example, if they had been doing 65 pounds and their warm-up was like 2 sets of 5 at 45, a set of 5 at 55, a set of 5, 3 sets of 5 at 65, they might continue along that pattern, doing just 10-pound jumps. 2 at 45, 5 at, 5 reps at 55, 5 at 65, 5 at 75, 5 at 85, and now they're trying to do 3 sets of 5 at 95, right? Because unless you address that, they're thinking, oh, the warm-ups all happen in 10-pound jumps, which might be true when you're only getting up to 65 pounds. But if you're going up, oh, good Lord, can you imagine if you were going up to like, I don't know, 225, you'd be warming up for an hour.
And I did have one of my young men, he came in with his dad last week, and I hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks, and he's warming up, and I finally looked at his logbook and I looked and I was like, there must have been 15 warm-ups there.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I was like, whoa. I said, he laughed. I said, okay, what'd you just do? Okay, we're going to jump to 95 pounds now. He was probably like a 55. I was like, or 65 or something like that. I'm like, okay, we're going to jump to 95 because your squat's like 125, 130. He was doing 5-pound jumps. Going back to what he had been doing when he first learned. I was like, yeah, but that was just, the minute I caught it, it was fine. And he could handle that bigger jump. But that's the thing. People are going to just copy and paste what you've done with them in the beginning. Yeah. And again, I said it takes about a month. We have a new client who's been with us for about 2 months now. And I think this past month, he's got a much better handle on his warm-ups because he's come to me every time and said, okay, I'm doing this today. Is this correct? And then I'll scribble it out. He goes, can you rewrite it for me? So what I typically say to people is start with your work set weight. What's your top weight today? Work backwards from there, right? 10%, maybe 15% or 20%, then 30%. So basically 90%, 80%, 70, 60, thereabouts, and then round up or round down. The problem is you do that and then they go off, they come back and they're squatting 122 and a half.
Right.
And then it becomes like, 53 and I'm like, okay. Just because you typed you calculated that and it comes to 53, let's just bump that down to 50. Make it 50. Let's say 50. Okay. And then we'll do 60. That's it's an approximation. It's kind of a general, but your last warm up, I'd like your last warm up to be about 10% off of your top set, maybe 5%, especially if it's an upper body lift, especially if you're a woman too, but even some of my guys, right? That comes with practice too. And you have to sit down and go through, a series of warm-ups, a series of the lifts with the person to kind of help them understand the calculation. And then once they become more, they have more practice with that, it becomes a little bit easier for them to calculate their warm-ups. And then I'm starting to see better numbers on the bar, bigger jumps with the upper body, with the lower body lifts, smaller jumps with the upper body lifts. But I have definitely missed people before and seen them, and they're warming up for 45 minutes. I'm like, okay, what happened here?
Right.
Let me see your book for a second. Okay, that's okay. It's called practice. We're still practicing. That's all right. And that's typically somebody who's a month, 2 months into their training, not someone who's been training for a year already.
So, I mean, basically, the points that you've covered, right, are total number of warm-up sets, which you want to be like maybe 4, right?
We had this question yesterday. Yeah, we had this question actually yesterday at our camp, at our Q&A. Right. Yeah, someone asked about warm-up sets. And of course,
so it's a relevant question.
It is, absolutely. Yeah. And I said, well, it depends.
Yeah, but I mean, it can vary, but roughly 4 warm-up sets, give or take 1 or 2, right? You're definitely not going to do 15. Nope. You're definitely not just going to do 1.
Right.
You're going to calculate backwards, right? Because the point of your last warm-up set, your last one, is just to get your brain prepared for how heavy the weight might be, or how heavy the weight is going to feel. A little bit more than that, okay, I can manage that. So you're just trying to get your brain in gear. If you need to do more to get your muscles warm, that's going to happen with the empty bar. If it's cold, it's winter, you're stiff, whatever, do 3 empty bar sets to warm up, right? That's where you want to do the extra stuff to warm your body up towards the end of the warm up. That's just for your brain.
Right.
And then, taper, like, I guess, because the final warm ups are just, mental preparedness.
Yeah. And I think, the older you are, you might have a couple extra warm-ups in there, or you might even have to do a little bit of a rest, a small minute rest, or say in between warm-ups. My 72-year-old client in the morning does just that. He'll warm up, but he takes his time warming up, right? He does the warm up. He checks his book. He takes the weight off. He puts the weight on. There's a few minutes in between each of those warm-ups. Me, I'm taking weight off, putting weight on, taking weight off, putting weight on. Coach Craig will take, hour and a half to deadlift. Because Craig warms up. Craig is methodical about his warm-ups, and he finds that his body needs more time to warm up for that. I mean, he's deadlifting, he did like 495 the other day. So, he'll be working up to 500 or over. But so he warms up, he takes his time warming up. That for him, he needs that.
Yeah.
He needs that. One of my other clients, within 15 minutes, he's got 505 on the bar, and he's lifting. That's a 35-year-old versus a 52-year-old man. That's also just the individual, right? So, I don't think people need to. We talked about this yesterday. You don't need to stress about your warm-ups, but you do need to prepare the body for you. What's going to work for you. And I'll tell people, you can't take big jumps. Be very mindful about the jumps you're taking, especially with your upper body lifts. That's where people kind of make some mistakes. They'll take too big of a jump. One of my lifters is preparing for the Stronger Together meet. So we're working on some heavy singles, and he did his heavy singles the other day, and the first one was really rough. And he had done this weight already for a triple. And then the next single was better. And he said he thought maybe it was his breathing that he had done kind of funny. Well, then the next day, or I think the day after, whatever, he was going to do this heavy singles again. So I called him he thought it was going to be his last warm up before he went to 142 and a half, and it was 125. And I see him taking the plates off and starting to throw on the, his weight. And I said, wait a minute, was that your last warm up? He said, yeah. I said, did you do the last time too? He said, yes. I said, you need another warm up. You're not going to jump from 125. I said, that's a big jump. He's like, oh, I didn't think about that. I said, that could explain very well why that first heavy single was so, frantic. Your body just wasn't ready for that heavy weight yet. So he did a single at 135, and then he jumped and it flew up. That, the first rep just flew right up. He said, oh, that made a lot more. He said, that felt a lot better. and made a lot more, makes a lot more sense now to him. I said, yeah, you can't discount that single, even that heavy single before a heavy, your heavier single, because you need that, especially with the upper body lifts, even especially more with the press, even than the bench. It's like the press, there's like that fine line, right, of where is too much and too little. Well, I'd rather always get air on the side of, I want to be 5 to 2.5 pounds away with my press, right? Because the press is so much, there's so much technique involved with that. Any little, the bar could go anywhere, so why not give your brain and your body time to prepare itself for that next heavier weight. That's where I think people kind of make the mistake with, especially the upper body lifts. Lower body lifts, bigger jumps can be needed.
But yeah, the other thing too, though, with bigger jumps is if you're going to do your bigger jumps earlier, right? So
yes,
if you have to do bigger jumps early in the warm-up set. So you go from, you're going to do a 225 for your squat or whatever. You're going to do maybe 50, 75 pound jumps maybe to begin with. You maybe go from 45 pounds to
135.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'll tell my, my lifters, your jumps are going to pretty much be the same. As that weight gets to a certain weight, as your work set weight gets to a certain weight, you're going to just repeat week in and week out those same warm-ups: 45, 135, 185, 225, 250. 45, 135, 185, 225, 250, 275. I mean, those are more like deadlift. I guess we could maybe deadlift jumps, but it's going to be pretty much by the time you get to 225, after 225, you'll go 185, 135, 185, 225. Then it might be, 245 for a deadlift, or then it might be 250, and then you might have another single in there somewhere. But you want to see that there's a pattern, and the pattern in the beginning is going to be boom, 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 boom. Then you might have to make some calculations as to, okay, where do I want that single to be before I hit this weight? And some people don't need that extra single in there. They can go from that double to their top set, and others might need a little extra, another little warm up. Mostly my older lifters, right? The older lifters need a little more warm up than my younger ones. They can make a bigger jump. So it's going to depend on the person too. And it's, trial and error. But I think having that takes practice, along with just learning the lifts. Figuring out your warm-ups is now I got to think about this shit. I got to think, I got to do math. It's all math. It's all math. And nobody can do math in the weight room. Don't care who you are. No one can do plate math. Plate math is just, everybody's brain just goes to mush when it comes to that. I see people just staring at the bar.
Well, the more confusing thing too, though, is if you're used to the base 45 math, and then you start working with somebody who's using the 33 bar, the Bella, and it's like, oh God, now I have to do 33 pounds.
And that is exactly why, to any of our female lifters out there, or male lifters who coach female lifters, that 33-pound bar, make it 35. Just put those little freaking micro plates on there, because that's what I do. I make it easy, and that way they're doing a 35-pound. It's a 35-pound bar. They've made it 35, and they can do plate math so much easier from that, because you make it 33, and then it becomes just 48, 53. It's ridiculous. So make it 35. That's easy. But everyone misloads their bar constantly. We laugh so much about that, because it's just like nobody in there who comes in there can do plate math. Well, and I can do plate math. I can't teach math to save my life. And I was a math teacher, but I can look at a bar and quickly tell you exactly what's on that bar. And the person's like, how'd you know that? I'm like, I visualize, I can see the plates. I know what it's going to be.
You memorize certain combinations.
Yeah, you memorize the combinations. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But that also, that's a good point about what you could sort of leads into the next topic. What do you do? So that's really more like, what do you do between your warm-up sets?
There you go.
Double check your plate math.
Yep.
What do you do between your last heavy single and your work set? Double check your plate math. Because I actually literally had somebody send me video this week with his bench, and he was like, the first set is a little wonky because it was 5 pounds heavier on one side than the other, right? Like, that sort of thing happens. Like, it sounds like, oh, I would never, but like people get distracted, something comes up. Like if you're lifting at home,
Yes.
somebody's calling you, they need you for something.
Yes.
Like one of my online people lives in his garage. His neighbors pop by all the time. So like, he'll be like, I had a 10-minute break between work sets 2 and 3 because my neighbor stopped by, and then he's like, wasn't sure if I should just get right back into it or warm up again. I mean, that's a good question.
It's a great question. It's a great question because for some people that 10-minute break actually improves the next set. I think people, a lot of people they get to talking, especially a lot of my older lifters, right? And I say older, I mean like my 65 plus, they're all hanging out.
I know exactly who you mean. And there's a lot of talking.
They all socialize. That's
but the fun part, right?
Then they go and they do the lift and they're like, oh, that felt really good. I'm like, yeah, you had a nice long break there. You didn't think you needed that break. So for them, a little extra time on the clock actually, helps them. But I've been in situations where I've been at the, been training and someone stops by the gym and I'm talking to them and all of a sudden it's 10 minutes goes by and I get back on the bar and it's a ton of bricks. It feels so heavy and I just kind of grind through it. And then the next set feels a little bit better. So for me, I can't have that long of a break. It's that then it becomes just too long and then you're cold and what do you do? Maybe the thing is you try the weight and if it doesn't feel like it's that good, maybe back off a little bit and warm up again. But typically you can still do it. It just might feel kind of crappy. And then maybe the next set probably will feel a little bit better.
There was one time I'm thinking about where I was up. It was around the time of my written. And Diego finished up with someone. And then he pulled out the whiteboard and gave me a whole mechanics lesson.
I think I remember that.
And it was nearly an hour long. And I was in the middle of deadlift. I think I had gotten almost up to my work set. I'm like, I should probably warm up all over again.
Yep.
You probably should.
Yep. He'll talk. He always says to me, he's going to do a quick lecture at the camps. And then he ends up doing an hour plus.
Yeah.
And I whispered, Chris was there yesterday. I said to Chris, he just loves to talk. And Chris goes, no. So, once he gets talking, he can't shut up.
You say that like you don't.
I will. I'm good. My practical portion of the camp gets shorter and shorter. I've got that down to a science now. So what to do between your work set weights? I think is that what we want to talk about? Like what to do once you warm up and you get through that top set?
A thing that happens a lot of times with people when they're just starting out is they don't even want to rest between their work sets, right?
Yes.
So that's your first discussion with somebody who's new to barbell training.
Yes.
About what do you do between the work sets? Like they think, okay, I've racked it. I took a deep breath. I'm ready to go again.
Exactly. And to be honest, right, at the time, they probably are. That weight, that's just the 15-pound bar you just pressed. So, and it's your first session. So you are ready to go again. Right. Let me talk for 2 seconds and then we'll let you go.
Yeah. And that's typically how I'll approach it with somebody who's new and they're really just doing the weight to get the practice in and it's not taxing for them at all. I will still talk in between.
Exactly.
And I will explain to them, we'll usually go over form. Okay, this is what happened on that. Or explain the cues and say, this is what happened. And when that happens again, I'm going to say, and that's sort of a debrief, right, about your set, and then look ahead and talk about what's going to happen in the next set. And then if they're brand new, I'm going to explain, I know you feel like you're ready to start again, but part of the reason I'm talking to you so much in between these work sets is to help you build a habit that you're going to need.
Right.
Which is not rushing into your next work set. You're going to need to wait between your sets. And so we're practicing that now too, because that is a very uncomfortable adjustment for people who have been used to doing something more along the lines of, like a group fitness class or HIIT training or even CrossFit, moving quickly between one thing and the next, circuit style training, that standing around. And it's when I first started coming up to 5x3 and I'd be like, hey, look, here's everybody between their sets, like a picture, and people are sitting there looking at their phones. And, there was one I think it was one of Steve's daughters, like brought Harry Potter up. She was reading in between, like people reading books, looking at their phone, talking to each other.
Right.
And it was like photo of the gym. Not a single person at that particular point in time was lifting anything. They were like synchronized work sets and synchronized rest times.
Yep.
Coincidentally. So, it's like, is anybody even working? Like, what's going on there?
Yep. Nobody trains. Everybody just sits around. My mother has she says she rests to perfection. Like she has perfected the art of resting. And granted, again, my older lifters need more rest, and I sometimes have to, but they like to rest. So then I have to kind of push them back to get back on the bar. I'm like, you're done. You're done. You need to get up. But I just sat down. I was like, no, you didn't just sit down. You've been sitting down for 5 minutes. Get up. And
find balance.
It's not that heavy.
It's the Goldilocks.
But it is. It's very tricky to teach people how to rest. And what I find, and I'm sure this has happened to you, is so we've talked about resting. They then take that resting and they put it into with their warm-ups. So I have to go back and remind people, and know your warm-ups, you don't need a rest. You don't need to rest 3 minutes between the bar and your first warm-up. Let's do it. Like, come on, let's move. And they're like, oh, I thought I needed to rest. And that's my job to let them know. So I said, nope, just the work set weight. That's the heaviest weight you're going to do, today. So no, with the warm-ups, just keep warming up. Your resting is take the weight off, put the weight on, grab a drink of water, and you're ready to go. Oh, okay. That makes sense. And this is okay. This is something that you have to teach people. If they're new to training, if they're new to the gym, if they're new to this type of exercise, this type of, training, they need to learn what the warm-ups are, why do we warm up, what a proper warm-up looks like, and when do I need to rest, and why am I resting? Well, your body, but more importantly, your central nervous system needs to kind of calm down, needs to prepare for that next set. And you rest too long, you could be too cold, and you could have lost some of that, you could not perform as well. You rest too little, same thing. You're not going to perform as well because you haven't recovered yet from, and really it's your brain hasn't recovered yet from that last set. And the warm-up might start with a 2-minute warm-up. I usually tell my new lifters, give yourself 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. They probably don't need the 2 minutes, but it starts to instill that art of resting. Yeah. Right? So 2 minutes, just, give yourself 2 minutes. And they're pretty good about resting 2 minutes. And then I say to them, okay, now give yourself 3 minutes. Okay, now it's going to be 4 minutes. And I'll say, give me, 4 minutes. 4 minutes? Yes. I'll make a point too of watching their work set weight and then saying, that was great, blah, blah, blah. Okay, 4-minute rest. And that's what they do. They'll put the timer on, or they just know, they can kind of get an idea of like they'll look at the clock. Then it becomes 5 minutes. And then I say to people, 5 minutes is about as much as you're going to need. You're not going to need more than 5 minutes. Just make that a standard rule of thumb, and then they continue on with their training. It's months into it. Now maybe they can play around with it. Maybe it's 4 minutes. Maybe it's 3 minutes because it's weight that they've done before. But that's all a learning process too, right? That's something that you have to learn. And if you have a coach, the coach should be helping you understand that and learn that, so that it becomes more habit. So that you start to know, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 minutes because I know that 3 minutes is just enough for me. But that felt pretty hard. So maybe I need to rest 4 minutes this time. The people start to kind of get a better idea of, what they need. But in the beginning, it's just to instill that habit of actually resting.
So then the question is, what do you do with your 3, 4, or 5 minutes?
Right. You can talk to your neighbor. Most people will pull out their phone, right? And they're scrolling through stuff, or maybe they're texting with somebody. I don't care what the person does between their work sets. I don't have a ban on phones. People are like, oh, no, people shouldn't be on their phones. Everybody's got a freaking phone. Mm-hmm. Let that person have their phone. I have my phone for my timer, right? That's what I use it for. I knit.
You're kidding me.
I knit between my work set weights. Yes. I have made quite a few scarves over the past year that I've given away, and I've pretty much done them all at the gym. That's what I do. I knit. I bring my needles over and I'll knit, and it calms me down. It takes my brain. It really does. It really relaxes me. The timer goes off. I'll finish what I'm doing. I'll put the needles down. I'll go do my set. I come back,
So,
I pick my needles back up, and I start to knit again.
I guess, Emily, what I'm hearing though is it's like yarn meditation.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you're clearing your brain, right? And I think, I mean, there's so many things that a person could do during their rest set.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I'm interested in with this question is not necessarily what the person does,
Right.
but what effect it has
Absolutely.
on them as they approach the bar
Yes.
before their next set. Because a person can do the exact same thing, right? Like scroll through Facebook or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, or check their email, right? They could do that and come away from that and feel good.
Right.
Like, or they could be agitated by something like a work email or some issue that came up or whatever, right? So you're kind of, throwing the dice, spinning the roulette wheel, whatever, when you're scrolling through your social media or your email, because you don't know what sort of input you're going to be getting.
Right.
And it's really more that which has an effect on your next set than the actual action that you're doing in between. So like if it's something that you can control and it's going to make you feel like clear your mind or focus your mind or that sort of thing. Like you could film your set, film your work set 1, look at that before you do work set 2, kind of in the same way that we were just talking about, like with a coach and a beginning lifter, you're going to debrief after the set and figure out, why did this rep feel this way? What happened there that I want to not repeat? What happened there that I do want to repeat? And sort of, shape your thought process going into your next set, right? That's helpful, right? So you can do that with video, but even if it's not like watching video of your lift, if you're doing something that allows you to either clear your brain, focus your brain, think about the lift, think about your form without stressing out about it, right? Because you can also spend that rest time getting way too spooled up in your head about your last set and what went wrong, and then could totally replicate the same mistakes because you got so spooled up about it.
Yep. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about what you're saying. And this is why I brought my knitting to the gym eventually, because I said, I don't care if people are on their phones, whatever. But in reality, I try to avoid being on my phone if I can. Right. And we're all like, addicted to this.
Right.
I try to avoid it because I want to clear my head and just be in the moment of like what I'm doing. And knitting provides me that. It doesn't give me any distractions. I'm focused on my knitting. I'm focused on this repetition, which I'm doing next. I'm doing something repetitive. So I'm doing this repetitive. And I'm also making something in the process too, for whoever, me, whatever. When I've been on my phone, I might find something that all of a sudden takes me down this like rabbit hole. And now all of a sudden the timer goes off and I turn the timer off and I'm still like focused on like wanting to see, well, what does Julia Roberts look like now 10 years later kind of bullshit, right? And I'm like, and then I have to tell myself, Emily, stop, because it's 10 minutes has passed. So that's a distraction I don't want to have. Right.
Yeah.
So what I try to do besides knitting, and some people will do this too. I will go through my logbook. I'll go back. Maybe I'll go back a few pages and look at what my week was like. Or I'll plan my next week. I do that a lot. I have a program. So I'll as I'm resting, maybe I don't want to do any knitting right now. I'll go to my logbook and I'll start to plan next week. And I'll plug in my warm-ups. I don't know what numbers I'm going to be doing, let's say for like a top single here or the triple there, but at least I know my warm-ups. So I can get an idea of, it sets me up for next week. So it sets my next week's session into motion already. I do think ahead. I just think ahead as far as like, I'd like to plan my week. This is especially if I know I can't train on Sunday because of, something like this week, I couldn't train Sunday because of the camp. So I set up my Monday schedule and it gives me an idea of like, yes, Monday I have to train because I missed Sunday. So I'll do that. And I watch some of my lifters do that too. They'll go back through their logbook or they'll make notes, to themselves. Anything that kind of sets you into a frame of mind for that next set is good. I think if you get distracted with something on your phone, an email, like you said, it could throw you off. It could make you really angry, and then you could have a really good next set. Or it could set you off, and all of a sudden, that session is just, crap because of something that just occurred and you have to leave, let's say, maybe, and go to work or
you get rushed, you've got to go fix,
put
out a fire, and I'm just going to finish this last set real quick, or
it's hard to, to kind of get an idea of like what to do. Some people bring books, like you said, some people will bring a book and they'll read. Others might have to work, so they've got their laptops and they're doing work, and maybe that's just a punch the clock kind of day, right? They have to get in there, they want to get in there, but they do have work to do, so they're going to be doing their work, and that's just more of a distraction. That's okay, because they're not thinking about their lifting. Their lifting is just, it is what it is that day. They're going to get it done, and but they're getting the session in. They haven't missed their session.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like last year when Sadie was getting started with the lifting, and like she didn't have a whole lot of time, and she, like, I have a photo of her like sitting down there, sitting on our broken treadmill like, with her laptop, and she was doing her homework in between sets, but it was like engineering homework or something. So it was like mathematical problem solving, but it was not anything like, I guess the stuff that I and that might be calming in a way, or neutral. Like, I think the stuff that people might, in certain people, myself, for instance, need to be wary of is the work related stuff in between that gets you agitated, right? Like anything that affects your, your Zen approach to the bar, right? That gets you like too agitated or pissed off or distracted or that sort of thing is generally not helpful.
Yeah. I'll tell people, people who need to learn how to rest, they don't want to sit down. That's fine. I don't necessarily sit when I'm resting. I don't. I walk around. I stay standing. I don't sit down. Other people like to sit. They like to sit and relax. If you can, just, take a walk around the gym. That's all I'll tell people. Take a walk around the gym. Some of my clients will go outside, if it's nice out, and get some, just kind of like, chill out there, get some air. Others will, sometimes I'll tell people, look, if you need to stay busy, we can do some active resting, active recovery, some pull aparts, some face pulls, something to kind of, to hit the shoulders, maybe do some shoulder stretching, something that kind of keeps you moving if you really can't rest. Because some people just don't know how to rest. They're constantly jittery, right? Yeah, exactly. So I tell them, take a walk around the gym. I could throw in some exercises that I want you to do that aren't going to interfere at all. Some of my clients who are working on their chin-ups, they'll go do their chin-ups in between their squats, right? It's a volume squat day. They're not really stressed about the squat. They can go and do some chin-ups in between that. It's not going to interfere with their squatting. So that's another way to almost, double up, let's say, on an exercise. So you want to get your chins in there. You want to get your push-ups in there. Well, do the push-ups and chin-ups while you're, waiting for that next set. That's another good way to kind of stay busy. Also give yourself that rest time, but, stay active, stay moving. What you're doing is not going to interfere at all with that next set, doing some, glute bridges on the floor while you're waiting for your bench. I've got clients who will do that. Great. It's active recovery. It gives you time to rest as opposed to just kind of scrolling through your, mindlessly scrolling through your phone that could or could not, may or may not disrupt, that training session. So yeah, I think there's no wrong or right way to rest. It's more of just, you want to kind of find something that can maybe works for you. For me, it's knitting.
Well, I guess we sort of like, we've been talking, I've been thinking mainly about like the mental aspect of what you're doing during rest and how that affects your attitude when you approach the bar. Yep. But like, you're also bringing up a good point about moving in between. And I know I've gone through phases like this, and I have clients who have, experience similar things where like maybe they do their squat, and for me it always is like when the squat is heavy, like close to my ceiling, right? And if I sit down in between, I'm much more likely to get like an achy back.
Yeah.
An achy low back. And I've noticed for myself, and I've suggested this for clients, and it's worked for them too. You know, if they're sitting down in between, particularly on certain lifts, squat seems to be, you know, the one that comes up most often. Instead of sitting, if they just kind of walk around or stay standing, like that physical action of walking or standing as opposed to sitting helps with their next set.
Yep.
So yeah, so there's like a little bit, there's, to me, a lot of what happens during the rest is mental, but there is like a physical piece to it, you know. And I mean, obviously the physical piece of like the reason you're resting is because you're letting your ATP recharge.
That's right.
You know, you're letting your muscles gather the energy that they need in order to do the next heavy set. It's a chemical process that needs to happen. You know, you need to find the other phosphate from the CP. So, right, that's the whole reason that you're sitting around resting or walking around resting. But the mental piece of it, and then also like the mechanical, how you're moving or if you're not moving, can play a part in that too.
Yes, I know that there was one time I sat down in between a press session. I had just done a set and I sat. And then my timer.
That's because you do a back bend when you press.
No. I sat down, and then the timer went off, and I jumped up, and I threw my belt on, and I went to do the set, and I was lightheaded.
Oh.
So I've learned either I don't sit down, and so I don't really sit down too much. But if I do sit down, I find myself a good minute, 2 minutes before the timer's going to go off, I stand up.
Yeah.
I stand up and I start to move around. And then the timer goes off and I'm ready to do my set. So I don't sit and then the timer goes off and I stand up and I go and do my deadlift or I go and press. Any lift, if I do sit down, I just find myself standing up and moving around and then going and doing the exercise.
Well, yeah. And I mean, there are definitely going to be times when you're doing a heavy, well, for me, it's usually like a squat or a deadlift where, I don't know, maybe I see some stars or, you know, that sort of thing. And there's really no question about it. Like I have to sit down, right? So that happens.
Yeah, that's different.
But like you sit for a minute, 2 minutes, that's like when I sit there and set my timer for my rest time. Maybe make my notes in my training log. I mean, and actually that's another thing I think to point out. Like, what should you do during your rest time? Make notes in your training log. Like that's actually literally the first thing I do. And if I'm feeling lightheaded, seeing stars, I'm going to do this seated. Otherwise, I'm going to stay standing. But like, make notes about RPE, what happened during that set, like. Did anything feel off? What do I want to focus on the next set? You know, if there's anything like I'm old, Emily, so there's like always like a little something that's nagging that I'm kind of tracking to make sure it didn't turn into an injury. And then maybe I'm going to check back through the log and see if I made a note about that muscle or area being sort of out of sorts the week before. That kind of stuff.
Before we wrap this up, because I think we're kind of coming to a good end here. Another thing to do, and I have a client who is really she's pressed for time recently because her work has gotten really busy. So she's coming in twice a week now. So we put together a twice a week program where she's basically just trying to kind of keep those heavy lifts maintained. She's not trying to make any big gains right now. She just wants to make sure she doesn't miss her sessions and that she's getting her squatting, her benching, pressing, everything in. So we're doing kind of, 2 big lifts and then a quick little circuit of accessory exercises, which she's loving. But we're doing this in like an hour, and maybe 75 minutes. She's typically one who takes a really long time to warm up, right? The warm-ups take a long time and the work sets take a long time. And she's always kind of like, she starts slowly and she kind of moves a little slowly. So this has been a crunch. Like I'm on her I'm like, okay, 3 minutes rest. And then this is your last set. Good. While you're resting, you're setting up your bar for your bench. Right. So it's like that kind of stuff. I do that too, to compress my time, to make sure that I'm not at the gym too long. I will as I'm finishing up one exercise, I'm already setting up my bar for another,
Yeah. So this was
And that's good too. That's it. That keeps you on track, and she's moving. She's moving faster through her lifting. Basically, because she's not spending so much time. She's actually doing better. She's not she's not thinking as much. But
overthinking.
Overthinking. But that's been me, like doing this, like, okay, next set. But now I'm watching her, and she'll get 3 or 4 sets in like a 10-minute block, because she really is like, okay, and now I'm going to do the next set, and it's 3 minutes, and she doesn't need as much rest time because it's weights that she's done before. There's, so, but it's the preparing for the next exercise. And while she's finishing that, she's getting her equipment ready to go for the next thing that she has to do. That's another.
Well, that's like the last time we did this podcast, and I was having such a great bones day because I had lifted early
right.
in the morning. I mean, that's exactly what I do when I'm at the racquetball club, because it's not like 5x3 where there is ample equipment. Right. And so I'll be Thursdays I do a heavy deadlift first and then a volume squat, and I'll start. And if I can get in there straight away and get on the deadlift platform, I'll get myself set up, I'll go through. And then like, while I'm even like just before I, between my work sets, I'll go over and start setting up the squat rack that I want, if that one's open. Like, I'll start moving my stuff over there to stake out that squat rack.
Yeah.
And then I will leave, I'm such a jerk, I will leave my work weight on the deadlift bar on the platform and go over and do my first empty bar set on the squat. And then do once I start the warm-ups where they've got weights on the bar, and I feel like it's visually obvious to people that I am in that squat rack, that's when I'll start adding weights onto my squat by stripping them off my deadlift bar. That's how I unload the deadlift bar. So it's like, definitely setting up deloading the bar from the previous lift during my warm-up, all of that.
Yeah. And if you have, let's say, if you're training at home and you have a couple bars, you're not just using the one bar, but even if you are, just start to gather your plates together. So you're finishing up your press, you're going to need a deadlift. Start getting those bumper plates ready. Start preparing what you're, just start writing down what what are your warm-ups. I mean, some people like to plan out their entire, session before they start. It's just a way for you to stay active, stay busy, and also keep the time down, because
it keeps the time down, but it also keeps your mind focused on what you're doing instead of letting it wander off onto some other distracting task.
So I do that all the time. I start to set something up, as I'm finishing up the last, the last part of it. And for my client, she's the member, it really has helped her. She's moving a lot faster through her lifts. So she's not thinking as much, which makes the lifting better. So there you go. And I'm like cracking that whip, and they're like, damn, Emily. I'm like, you're time. Oh yes, time, and like, all right, start setting your deadlift bar up. Right. But I remind her, because I know she's got a time crunch, and I want her to get the entire program in, and she can do it as long as she stays on task. So I think that's a way to calculate your weights for your warm-ups, and some ideas of maybe what to do if you're not doing that. If you're kind of like, what, I don't know what to do while I'm resting in between my sets. Here are some thoughts. And of course, as always, if you have your own stories and what you do when in between your work set weights, share them with us, so we can tell the listeners next time, from so-and-so, this is what this person does. Because, everybody kind of finds what they need to do in order to prepare themselves for that next set. Some people like to listen to music. I guess if you're at a gym where the music's kind of, a globo gym, you might put your headphones on, listen to something that's going to kind of motivate you and pump you up for like the next set. There's that too. A lot of people will do that at our gym. We're playing music, but some people might put headphones on if there's a certain song they want to play before they do their.
That's so interesting, because I never wore AirPods or headphones at 5x3.
No.
Because at least 75-80% of the reason that I wear them when I lift other places is because I want to give a clear signal to other people that I don't feel like talking to them. Well, like I'm there to do my lifts. I'm not there to have a social hour. And like at 5x3, it's like I don't want to send that message. And I would, because everybody there understands that when the timer goes off, even if we're mid-sentence and somebody says, sorry, I got to go lift,
but also
it's rude.
Right. But also, I mean, I have a client who has headphones and he wears them, but when he knows that he needs some coaching, because that's the whole point of being at my gym is you get coaching. I can't coach you when you're got your headphones on. Right. You take them off. I don't care if you're wearing them for something that you don't necessarily need coaching for, or, it's not a big deal. Wear your headphones. That's totally fine. But he now knows. He takes them off. He does his work set weight. I give him the cues. He puts the headphones back on. He does his thing. And then when he's ready, he takes them off. But he wasn't doing that before. And then he realized, oh, what am I here for? If you're here to get coaching, what's the point of listening to your headphones while I'm trying to give you feedback on your, have you squat? I mean, it's stupid. It's ridiculous. But I don't mind if you've got them on to prepare you for that. Let's say you need it for that set. Sure. Listen to what you want to listen to. Then take them off and go for it. It's completely fine. Everybody finds their own way to kind of get revved up. That wraps up our podcast for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the previous podcast on gains and running out that LP and, when is an obvious linear progression over and how do I know? That's a big part of training is figuring out, well, what's the next step? Where do I go from here? And of course, warm-ups and calculated warm-ups are also a part of that as well, especially the more you get into your training. So as always, send us your thoughts or comments or questions about anything that we've talked about. You can email me at emily@5by3.com, and you can find Rebecca at
cornerstonestrengthmaryland@gmail.com or .com.
So join us for our next podcast in a couple weeks. Again, we don't know what the topic's going to be. We have a couple in mind, so it'll be a surprise to you as much as it will be to us. We record it.
We'll roll the dice and pick a topic.
Always. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and I think Thanksgiving's coming up soon. So this might be coming up. This might be coming up after Thanksgiving. So
I got 18 turkeys to process.
Woo!
Some of them are big monsters.
That's why you the turkeys.
Yeah. Yeah, the 32-pound turkey edition.
So this might be coming out after Thanksgiving. So if it does, I think it is, I'm going to say have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Or hope you had a great Thanksgiving because I don't know when this is going to come out. We'll be back soon. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening as always. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.